The following transmission is a conversation with Brandan Lee, otherwise known as Thain, founder and lead developer of Radian-Helix Media and the lead developer of Fallout, New California. For many in the Fallout community, New California was their first introduction to DLC-sized mods that take place in world spaces separate from the main game, otherwise known as total conversion mods. While other ambitious mod projects like Autumn Leaves and Afterwar Nevada have existed for much longer, New California helped to set the standard for what a full-size DLC mod project could be, with scope and scale that other mod projects like The Frontier, Nuevo Mexico, and Fallout London have sought to replicate. Over the course of our conversation, we'll talk at length about the development of Fallout New California, Radian-Helix's other projects, as well as both the current and future state of the modding community beyond just Fallout. I am follower Toshi, and this is the Atomcast. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to follow for future episodes, and consider subscribing to our Patreon for early access to new uploads, to help keep episodes ad-free, and to improve the quality and frequency of transmission. As always, links to our Patreon, as well as guest socials, can be found in the description. And be sure to leave a comment recommending creators that you'd like to see as future guests. Without further ado, Thain.
I remember because back in like 2014, 2015, I think it was 2014, because I was in Romania. I was working on The Dark Prince with Perry Tio. And I was off of New California, which at the time was Project Brazil. We did a sprint, Rick and I, between 2012 and 2013, and it finally came out that October in 20. No, it was in May, wasn't it? It was back in May of 2013. So we took a little bit of a break because Rick and I were both really burned out from the first push to get Project Brazil's kind of like alpha version out there, like 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I really just didn't have any time to be home because I was working so much, either between California or elsewhere. And finally came back towards the middle of 2014 and didn't have a job at the time. I had like a nice little 3-month break in the film industry. So I was talking to Rick and we started to work on New California again. And right about that time, Andrew from Maybe Next Time, who was working on The Frontier, I think he's one of the guys who originally founded on the Gun Network.
Mm-hmm.
He had come and asked me if I wanted to work on writing. And he said that, Project Brazil had been a big inspiration for him, just to kind of realize that you can do something of this scale with a very small team using the GEC. And they just wanted to figure out, how do you do that? How do you accomplish something of that scope with so few people? And, you have to tell them you have to be insane, first and foremost. But it's going to take everything from you while you're making. But he invited me to come and write, and I was all for it. I was like, yeah, absolutely, dude. Fuck yeah. I'll write for you, dudes. It seems like you've got a really cool team. There's obviously some big names from Fallout modding community, and New California has always kind of just been the redheaded stepchild of the modding community. Nobody really cares about us.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind sharing some resources coming in. I'll write for you. You guys maybe help us out sometime in the future. It'd be really cool. And they're like, sweet. So I was like, yeah, let's do it, dude. Send me over what you got. Show me your cool stuff. And he showed me like some videos and some like little writing that he had done. And I thought it was like, it's kind of rough, but it has potential. So I bounced him back some ideas. And then after that, all of a sudden, it just got dropped. And I didn't hear about him again for like the next year.
Mm.
And I was like, what's going on? That sucks.
Yeah.
I was excited. You got me jazzed to go to Portland. We're going to have a snowy Fallout. How dope is that? But then, yeah, after that, it just kind of seemed like New California and then Frontier very much had a very hard line between the two of them. We never really got to share much at all from that point forward.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it sucked. It was a very lonely time in California. Pretty much just Rick and I. And yeah, it was a very big project with a lot of moving parts, and we kept trying to get new recruits to come in and help us. Sometimes we get somebody who would work maybe like 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then either they would finish their commitment because they only came in for that little tiny piece, for which we're very grateful, or they would just string us along for a little bit and then ghost us, which is kind of a problem with all volunteer projects, but it was especially rough for us. So Yeah, that happened a lot, and it finally kind of came down to it was really just Rick and I doing all the heavy moving, like 90% of the mod just between me and him. And obviously, Rick did phenomenal work scripting all of those quests. I would do most of the writing, if not all of it. I would do all the level design. I would make a bunch of the new models and textures and everything else. And then I also, in person, recorded all of our voice lines and then made the cinematics and, yada, yada, yada. Basically, we did a lot of shit, Rick and I. We did so much stuff on that mod. But yeah, it was pretty much just him and me. And that was rough. And it was kind of lonely. And it's a real grind when you have that quantity of material to get through. So it also limited us in what we could and we couldn't do. So obviously side quests fell off at one point. Companions really fell off at one point, really very hard. And we never quite recovered from that in a way that either I would appreciate or I know the audience would appreciate more. So that's kind of some other regrets that come with a scope that big is that we did finally accomplish the thing that we set out to do and has a lot of very, very cool stuff in it. I think it managed to prove, what we were capable of at the time with no resources. But it was also just a really good experience for me, just like a learning experience doing something of that scope, understanding, the holistic approach of how do you make it's a game where the engine and architecture has been taken out of the equation for your programmers, but all of the art asset creation, all the level design, all the sound design, all the voice work, all the writing, all the scripting, that stuff comes from you. So you really are doing like I would say maybe like a third of full-on game development when you're making a mod of that scope. So it's not like a full-on game because when you're making a game, you have a much bigger hurdle of first you have to improve your engine and your tooling, and that can take many months to many years. And then if your budget is like you have 2 years worth of development time on your story, then you're just rushing. You're rushing so fast to get through that stuff. You're just pushing and pushing and pushing. You do all the pre-production while your tooling is spinning up. You figure out what we can and we can't really do in reality once those tools have matured. And then yeah, it just becomes just like you plan to make a game in 2 years for 6 years, like total. And that's always a really interesting sprint when you're doing that. Like you prepare so much, it's almost like you're trying to get ready for like an athletic sport. You're just grinding these quests and these narratives and hoping that you get it right when it comes down to really doing it.
So what was like the original idea with New California? You sit down one day, you put pen to paper. How did you get from point A from the start to the end point in that beginning stage, which is the realization of the concept? When you were going in, what was the original concept you were working with and you were tinkering with New California?
So back in 2008, which is a great time to be in your early 20s, um, we had the writer's strike, which kind of destroyed Hollywood, and I was mostly working as a production assistant, but I had found a job in Grip Electric, and I was really starting to get serious about being, working in film industry, and I was getting my union hours down. And then the writer's strike happens, and all of a sudden everybody's fucked. And then the financial crisis happens, and then everybody's fucked. All at the same time. Like every studio in LA shut down, and I'm in this apartment that I can't afford with a car that I can't afford and insurance I can't afford. And it's just like, oh God, what's going to happen, guys? How long is this going to go on? So one of
Luckily,
my
it
buddies,
continues because nothing changed.
yeah, yeah, it turns out it has just been like 20 years of nonstop insanity.
Exactly. Especially since, because you said writer's strike, and my thought was like the writer's strike we had like last summer. And I'm like, wait a
Oh
minute,
yeah,
that
yeah. The
wasn't
other
2008.
writer strike because there've been three in the last 20 years,
Yep.
and so there's the 2010, there was the 2008, and then there was the most recent one over the AI issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jesus Christ. But I ended up having to move back to Tucson. And as I was leaving Los Angeles, I saw like in the rearview mirror, as you're going on the 10 back towards Phoenix, you just kind of see these little sparkling orange colored lights off in the distance, and it looks like a billion little campfires like off in the distance. It looks like it's on fire, like the city is burning. And I just kind of had this kind of like I was going home. I knew I was going to play Fallout 3 because I hadn't played it yet. I hadn't had time, but I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Fallout that was set in like San Bernardino or like LA? Like you're not quite in LA, but you're just outside of it and you can kind of see it off in the distance. Wouldn't that be fucking cool? So, because I played Fallout 1 and 2 when I was a teenager, and I was like, these games are just fucking dope. I love these things. I was really looking forward to Fallout 3. Got back home, played the hell out of Fallout 3. I probably played it for like 80 to 100 hours. And eventually I cracked open the creation kit and realized that, oh, wow, this is actually, I understand how to use most of this stuff. Because I'd used the free version of Unreal and free version of Hammer Engine, like way back in the day, like the Source engine, what it used to be. Um, I played with the Quake engine a little bit when I was a teenager too. So I was like, I can make some stuff in here. Like the dialogue tools, they're really, really transparent. They make a lot of sense. The level building tools are what you see is what you get. It looks really good. I don't have to fight with the user interface. I don't have to do all this other crazy shit. I can just work on textures and meshes and build levels. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make LA and I'm gonna blow it up. That's gonna be my vengeance over the summer of 2009, 2000, like starting to go into 2010. And I started the first part of Project Brazil, and I wrote this story. Like you were gonna be a group of vault dwellers that start in a vault, and you kind of have like a coming of age moment. And then you're gonna go on a journey to Los Angeles and like find in the ruins. There's gonna be an old science experiment that was trying to understand like space and time and how does this work in this universe and where did the split in the time continuum happen that caused like the nuclear war to occur. So there's another vault out there that's been researching like the stealth boy technology because apparently it can cause people to disappear by shunting them into like another dimension, right?
Hmm.
So you can start to like explore what's happening on the other side by doing this. It makes you invisible, but it also has the problem of like you start to get the whispers of the ghosts on the other side of the veil, you know? It starts to drive you crazy. And I thought that was an interesting concept to play with. So I was like, what would happen if a Nightkin who had survived the death of the Master in Fallout 1 had decided he was not satisfied and he really wanted to reboot what the Master was trying to do? And then your Vault Dweller character has to go find him and figure out what's going on and like put an end to this. So that kind of spun up the basic concept of what New California ultimately did become. It was very similar to that. We never ended up going to LA. We decided to stop short and stay out in San Bernardino and bring, the father character to Fort Dagger Point instead because that just cuts out a lot of like extra level building time. I really liked building in Fallout 3 because you had all those urban ruins. We don't have those in New Vegas. They actually got cut out. A lot of them are there, but a lot of them are missing. So I took 2010 off again because I was working first that November. I was working on Man vs. Wild for the first time, and that was Man vs. Wild Season 6. So we were doing all kinds of fun stuff. Like we're just like, climbing mountains and have like dune buggies propelled by a parachute and shit. And that was really fun. So I spent most of that winter doing that. And then going into the summer of 2010, I was working on a bunch of different movies. Finally, I took most of 2011 off also. I didn't really get much of a chance to work on anything on my PC except for just like work stuff. And then I came back to it in 2012, and that's when I met Rick because New Vegas had just come out a little bit before, I think. And I wanted to port my old Fallout 3 material over to New Vegas, and that required, some help. So I talked to Rick, who was available on the Nexus forums, and he said that he would help me port it over. And then I pitched him after we'd finished that project, which took like maybe like a month. I pitched him on this idea of just like doing this story, and I showed him some of my script writing and the things that I'd put together so far. And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." So I was like, "All right, man, let's really get serious about this." So I really buckled down and I wrote as many scripts as I could and made all of the levels of the vault and some of the outside world stuff, which I kind of regret now because I should have done it much different. But it was a learning experience, It's my first time working really seriously in the GEC and getting down to the brass tacks of actually making a giant open world for the first time. It turns out there's a whole fucking grammar that you need to know that I just didn't know at the time.
What is that grammar?
It's just like the distances between points of interest. Like if you're trying to hold the audience interest, you're baking a kind of story into the landscape, aren't you? Like the things that you can pass through and the things that you can't, that's like a set of gates. That's kind of like a code. You're trying to draw the human eye and get the attention of things that are just like within eyesight. You want to play with some verticality and make that kind of interesting. And if you don't know the rules of that, it's very easy to make a chaotic mess that to a player is just easy to get lost in, and they lose the narrative thread. So Bethesda and their team, they usually have like 60 to 80 people working on these projects. I had me, and I didn't have anybody with experience I could go and ask about these things. So I made a lot of stupid mistakes, and then those stupid mistakes kind of compound as you're trying to fix them, and it just kind of turns into a mess. But I did make the initial start of it, and we did finally release Project Brazil in 2013. And at the time, I had all of my film and theater buddies that I knew at the time come and record this audio with me. Like, these are people that I either went to high school with or college, or I'd worked in like local films and stuff on, or like stage plays and things. And I brought as many of them in as I could. And my buddies Steven and I, we started with Colonel Bragg. Like, I knew that character I wanted to be like a central theme of the game was like we're trying to recapture glory. We're trying to like go back to like the old times and fix mistakes, but by doing so, we're fucking things up for the current generation. You know,
Mhm.
it's kind of on the nose, but it was basically what my life was like in my 20s in that decade. So I wanted to do kind of a story that was like an homage to what everybody was dealing with at the time, and kind of like looking forward into, you know, the history that's unfolding at that time. It's now the past, unfortunately. But just looking forward to like what are people thinking is going to happen to us in our future. You know, Fallout is retrofuturistic. It's kind of taking something from the future and looking back into the past, and having us reflect on ourselves in a lot of ways. There was a whole sense, especially in Fallout 1 and 2, that I think Fallout 3 didn't manage to capture as much, where, you know, Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky and all of the guys that were working on Fallout 1 were very much like products of the Cold War. And they had grown up in, you know, 70s and 80s, and they were making their game in the 90s when, you know, things were starting to feel a lot better. Like the Soviet Union had fallen, the walls had started to come down, and people were starting to have like more of a hopeful future. But that terror of the air raid sirens, growing up thinking you might get nuked at any point in time, like you're kind of planning for the future, but you're only really living for day because you don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. And you can
Right.
imagine for 40 or 50 years of American history, people were literally just living for today with the assumption that they might all get nuked to oblivion like tomorrow. You know, like how do you plan for families? How do you plan for your future? How do you plan a business when you think you might just be throwing it all away?
Hmm.
So Fallout, in a lot of ways, was really just kind of looking at the kind of mentality of what kind of civilization lives like that when it actually happens to them, and then what happens after that when like the end of the world turns out it's not in fact the end of the world. It's just another continuation of something even potentially even worse or even weirder. So I liked that idea. I really was really gripped by that. So I really liked Bragg being in Vault 18 as kind of like this covert spy for the Enclave who really wants to, you know, bring America back to glory and usher in this new version of America. And he's teaching these kids that there is a future out there beyond the vault doors. You just have to be willing to go and get it. And that means that you've got to have the right kind of character for it, because it's like a very personal philosophy. His kind of patriotism. It's all about, you know, who you are, how you deal with problems, how do you solve issues with like social problems and things like that. Which of course Bragg is always just like, you could just murder them all. But yeah, so the idea was he loses an election, and between him and Overseer Christensen, there's a big schism that happens in the vault. Originally, there was going to be a big time jump between the first part and the second part. There's going to be like 4 years of difference, but I ended up just like going back, and for the final release of New California, that just became like an overnight thing. But it gave it just enough time that you meet Bragg and you get a sense of his philosophy and what he's all about, and you can get a sense of like Dr. Rossman, who's like the counter to Colonel Bragg. I knew I wanted to split the game into two so that you never really got the full picture of what was going on politically, either in the vault or in the biggest story of the game. I really wanted to give the player an opportunity to choose what they wanted to do first and define themselves in a lot of ways. Because you can, I didn't really do the best job at getting the player character to like the level of like the rest of the Fallout games where you have so many options of who you can play as and like really make your build really unique. But you've kind of got like a charismatic character, you've kind of got a character who solves problems with their intelligence, and then you've got another problem who solves it with like violence. Those are kind of like my three sort of like archetypes for like what the player choices we're going to break down into. But also, almost every branch in the game really splits really heavily, so you can see the different sides of the way that the story could go. And that was a really interesting thing. That was actually very successful in New California. I think we did that right. Is that there's so many branching paths that were so interesting that you really do get a sense that like you have a lot of freedom in this vault to make stuff the way that you want it to be.
Yeah, because
But
that was perhaps one of the more interesting aspects of New California specifically, because obviously
Mhm.
since New California's come out, we've seen other like bigger Fallout mods.
Mhm.
Obviously like the Frontier. While some of them haven't come out, like what is it? Nuevo Mexico.
Mhm.
But then other mods that have come out but haven't been like world space mods, but have
Mhm.
been like larger stories. So you think like King Gath Sim Settlements 2. New California was very unique and still kind of is very unique in the sense that you have those sort of like branching paths to where
Mhm.
it almost works in sort of like a visual novel style where you
Maybe.
in well specifically in the sense that like the way that it's written, um it's very clear that like because you think with some stories it's just kind of like a shotgun approach, right? There's
Mhm.
different paths, they kind of go in the same direction but they kind of go in different directions, but they're inevitably going to the end goal is to hit the same point.
Mhm.
With New California, it all kind of does like wrap back around to the ending because the game has to end, but
Mhm.
it's interesting the way that it actually gets there because there seems to have been a very deliberately planned out like this is the route we take for this one. If you're like a strong like a more strength based focus, if you're
Mhm.
more of like an intelligence build, you're going on this way. We see that reflected in not only the beginning of the game where the interactions that you have are different depending on whether you choose to be the brainy type or the football star.
Yeah.
And it continues on with like your interactions with certain companions, what missions you choose to do and not to do. And while there are of course that's just basic level design and
Mhm.
writing
Mhm.
and stuff like that. The fact that each individual path sort of feels like the story was designed to be played in that specific way
Mhm.
instead of like this is just another way you can play the same basic story is
Yeah.
really interesting, and again not something that we've seen attempted so far, or at least brought to full fruition across all of the different Bethesda creation centric games that we've
Yeah. Well,
that
just
we're working on.
just games in general, and the reason why I found out is because it's really fucking hard to maintain that. Like,
Mhm.
it takes all of your time, effort, and attention, and everything from your team if you have one, if you're lucky enough to have one anyway. Because, your level design has to be open, but also be willing to bifurcate so that you can go in two different directions that are very unique for each path. Maybe you retread things in the scripting, but you want it to look unique as well as feel unique every time you go through that story too. So you're now doubling whatever efforts you already had in almost every area of your game. You're doubling the amount of voice acting, you're doubling the amount of level design, you're doubling the amount of writing, the amount of bugs that you have to fix and then deal with, obviously. And then when you interlace them also, because we did that a lot in New California, we created a lot of paths that weren't just parallel, but you could go between one or the other at any time. And that also makes it a little bit more complicated. And that happens all throughout the game. So. Like there were some mistakes made. Just like I needed a team, like a writer's room that I could rely on to execute. That would have been a big help in making it not as linear as it seemed to be. Because well, the game really isn't like it's not a railroad. You're not being forced to like, take a choice and you have to make that choice. It's more just like time is progressing, right? Like time is, they're like these frame references of time that are going through that game, and you have to have made some decision by the time that you get there, including no decision at all, which you can do in some cases. So like I think one of the big ones is you can join Vault 18 in the revolt after it's starting to blow up and the coup is happening. Or you can join the Enclave, or you can just decide to go murder hobo, or you can just try to do nothing. So there's like 4 branches there, but doing nothing, it ultimately coalesces on you eventually end up shooting somebody who's trying to shoot you, and that gives you a side, right? And if you then shoot the other side also, then you're on the murder hobo route, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the vault, it opens up either way. But it was difficult creating those 2 different paths, and it was very interesting. And I think that was a strength of what New California was offering players. It's almost like you're getting multiple different games, but you have to play the game multiple times to see them all. And while it's very cool, it also has the downside of if you're the kind of player who only wants to do one run, and ironically, I am one of those players, then you don't ever get to see the full story. You don't get to see all of the cool stuff. You only get to see that thing that happened to you on that one run that you took.
Yeah,
And
because again, you have like the core game, New Vegas. You have different factions that you can join up with,
right.
and do like different quests with, and then approach the end game with. But they don't have like their own, they sort of tell their own stories through the quest that you're sent on and stuff like that. But I don't think I've seen a Fallout specific project that has done what did what New California did, in which each individual, you think quote unquote factions in New California. You think the Raiders Alliance, you think the Enclave, you think the NCR, and they each have like their own presence and their own atmosphere. You do go on specific key missions like assaulting the fort, or sneaking into the fort, dealing with the father, all that major plot point stuff. But the fact that you have sort of such a different gaming experience between the 3 major factions is probably the biggest thing that sets apart New California from just about any other mod project. The Frontier is probably the closest, but the Frontier sort of had a lot of issues in its development, but it was closer in the sense that it seemed to be maybe not trying to replicate, but going down a similar path to where it was trying to create a unique gaming experience based on the faction you chose to join, rather than just being, oh, this is how you play the game, but you're like, you're wearing a Legion outfit instead of an NCR uniform.
Right.
And more so when you pull back from the factions and focus on just like your character specifically. Because one of the things you talked about before was creating a sort of like a presence in the space that you're in, creating a sense of distance and scope and everything. One of the most notable moments that is just like stuck in my mind when it comes to New California, specifically after the attack on the cabin, and then you go in the woods, you talk to that old guy and his dog. He said, you got what?
His name is Richard Camper.
That was it. I couldn't remember his name. Camper. I thought it was Camper because I'm like, oh, it's a camp. He's camping. He's in the woods. Anyway.
Also played by my friend Richard, also, who's a phenomenal actor here in Tucson.
Oh, fantastic. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But you have the like, oh, do you go left or right? But no matter which way you go, I mean, more so specifically, if you go left and continue on to the NCR,
Uh-huh.
you go on a very long walk between where you started and where you end up to do
Mhm.
like actually more questing stuff. And specifically that walk from the forest to the overpass, when it like opens up, like you leave the forest and it sort of opens up and you can see the whole landscape and stuff. It
Yeah.
really does help to create that sense of space and scope and presence.
Yeah.
Especially since New California was like the first big, you know, what a lot of people these days refer to as like, you know, a DLC sized quest mod,
Yeah.
in the sense that it like takes place. I mean, you know, DLC sized quest mods like a little bit too general for me. I usually refer to
Mm.
them as like world space mods because they take place in a specific world space that's separate from the main game.
Yeah. Yeah. Before DLC took over everything, we used to call them total conversions, but
Oh man, God, that I'm having such a flashback now. I that like oh he's using the ancient tongue. I
yeah, it
remember
is
that
the
total conversion. Oh God,
remember when we had total conversions? It was in the
the
days of expansion packs, the days of yore.
you unlocked like a secret corridor in my brain. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it was back in the days of like Black Mesa and like, what was that Crisis game? It was the Mech Warrior
Oh
Crisis
God,
game was really
yeah.
dope.
I can't
Yeah,
remember the
doing
name of it.
big open world cool stuff was what I really wanted to do back in the early aughts because I thought that was just like when you imagine games when you were a kid in the 90s, you imagined them where the borders of the map that you were stuck on just went forever and you could go off that map and just keep exploring. Because in the 90s, you know, things were different. We didn't have cell phones. Like you played these games to exhaustion. Like you played them until you had gotten every fucking achievement and every possible secret had been unlocked. And you got to a point where you were almost bored playing this game just to exist in this imaginary universe. And you imagined what existed beyond that fake, like, you know, horizon in the distance. And you wanted to go there. And to be able to have the tools in your hands, developer, to make that stuff, I mean, it is a little bit of a Pandora's box. You start to do this stuff, and yes, it is very cool, but then it comes with costs to
Right.
come drag you back down to reality of how much work is actually going to be involved in creating something that immersive. And you really do need a team of like 30 to 80 people, which of course in Year of Our Lord 2025 has balloons to games costing as much as the budget of fucking NASA in a year. But
I did a little bit of like background research for a short recently, because I saw like a news article or something that said that Star Citizen had gotten to like $800 million in total raised funds, and I'm like that what.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of that is us developers. Like we are pitching the studio and the executives, and then they are looking back at us and the rest of the industry. And there's sort of like a positive feedback loop of us developers saying, we want to make games and we want to make more of them because we love doing this. We love the work. It's not about the money. It is about doing cool shit that we have always imagined to do. And that can cause scope to inflate. But then the executives are looking at that and they're looking at the other executives and they're reading their trade industry magazines when they're on the shitter. And they're just coming back to us and just being like, hey, you know what? I am part of an investment firm, as of an investment group. I'm not just working for a company. We're investing 50 to $100 million every year in this project, but we're doing the exact same thing in 10 other projects. And that sounds insane. That sounds just like that's like the GDP of a fucking country. Why would you do that? Because you know some of these games are going to fail. In fact, most of them are not going to make their budget back. Why are you doing it? Well, it turns out if you get one of these games that manages to make $2 or $3 billion and becomes one of these massive franchises, it makes up for like the 10 other complete total failures.
Yeah,
Like financially, it makes complete sense when you look at it that way.
yeah.
And for us game devs, that can be very, very cool, can be very liberating because we can do amazing things. Downside is a lot of it's going to fail and it's going to burn and it's going to suck. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's just it's the gamble of the industry, basically. Remember that South Park episode? There was, I think it was like talking about the IRS, and they just had like a big wheel and they just like beheaded a chicken and then threw it in there, and then wherever the chicken, like that was the financial decision they make. That's how the stock market works. It's all just black magic and high stakes gambling.
Yeah, I mean, well, some of it is like we in an ideal universe, you keep your game dev, especially at the beginning phases, kind of small, because faith and trust are the currency of game development. And when you're trying to prove your game when it's an ugly duckling, it doesn't look good. It runs like shit. It's unoptimized. It's not even very fun yet, but there's like a kernel of fun. It could be really, really good. Almost all of our favorite games that have become big hits and are memorable and we love them started off as a game that if you looked at that thing, you would be like, what the fuck is this shit? And it really is. It's a leap of faith from that point onward. Like, we're spending ungodly amounts of money. We're all working 60 hours a week on this thing. And we genuinely don't know if it's going to be amazing or not. We hope so. We hope so. And we're working towards a goal that we believe is going to be fantastic. But until you've got the experience under your belt of doing things, the scope of New California, like starting your career, and then you actually get into AAA and you've done this a few times, you have no fucking clue what you're doing. And if there was like a special like magic formula for like what's going to make a hit game, like people would be spamming it like crazy and there'd be all kinds of hits all over the place. But there's no magic 8-ball that just tells you this game is going to be good. Like, you hope. You have your highest aspirations and then you just try your best to execute on it.
Is that sort of the like what you experienced with Fallout: The Frontier or the New California? Because again, like, I think people kind of underestimate how big of a big deal New California was, because it was the precedent that pretty much every other mod project maybe not leapfrogged off of, but like used as like, the base. Like, it proved that like this can be done to scale.
If you're willing to almost kill yourself, you can do this.
Yeah, like I said, we just had TG Spy on for the last episode, and he said like pretty much the same thing. I asked him during the end of the interview, like, what advice would you have for somebody who, wants to like make something this big? And is basically it all boiled down to like, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Because it's not just the budget. Like, I spent pretty much only my own money making this project. It wasn't very much. I didn't cost any more than maybe like $5,000 or $6,000 all told, and most of that was for like equipment and transporting actors when they just couldn't get to me for free. Everybody was a volunteer who worked on the project. I couldn't pay modders to work on it. Like, it was basically cursed. Nobody wanted to work on New California. Everybody wanted to be associated with it, and years later, people have like contacted me, and they'll be like the boss of a company. I'll be like, hey, it's got this New California on his resume, and I'll be like, who the fuck is this? I don't know who the fuck this is. But people want to claim credit for having worked on it, but really it was largely, almost overwhelmingly, Rick and I, until later in like 2016, 17, and 18, we started getting more volunteers, some of which were, on the Frontier team. My buddy Jack Wong, who's really, really cool. He worked on War for the Overworld and a bunch of other really cool games now. He was working on a lot of the props and environmental assets and weapons in the Frontier. And Jack is just such a joy to work with. Like, he's so fun to work with. It's very frustrating that he wasn't on New California. But he was, he came and he helped us out every now and again. Jamila helped us out a few times, mostly on like animations of things. Jamila's really, really cool. Who else came over and helped out? I want to say that there was another person who worked from the Frontier who came by for like a week and did some cool stuff for us. I think it was TG Spy himself. I think it was Thomas himself. He did that. He worked on like programming a sentry bot to attack somebody at I-15. I think that's what he did. And I was trying to convince the Frontier team to work with us a little bit closer, because we are like the two biggest mods. But there really is kind of like this embargo between the two of us. TG Spy really wanted to have his mod finished before anybody went to work on anything else, and he would kind of get up their ass if they did work on other things, and that was kind of shitty. But it really did leave us in a lurch where we just couldn't recruit anybody. Either everybody was working on their own, felt like they were in competition with us, which wasn't true. I mean, I was freely sharing anything anybody wanted at any time. It was just, you work on somebody else's project. A mod is for free. You're not getting paid. So why are you doing it? Well, you're doing it because you're making something cool that you enjoy making. Well, why would you do that for somebody else if you enjoy making things on your own? Right? So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, and it makes it really hard to recruit volunteers to a project like that, even if it is very, very cool. So all of the projects, like Fallout London, had a really awesome team, very tight, kept incredible quality control despite the volunteer nature of the project, and it's amazing that any of these things get goddamn made. Like
Yeah.
it is. If one of these things reaches at the fucking finish line, even if it sucks, like that's amazing.
Yeah,
Because the amounts I can't overestimate. Like it is impossible to exaggerate work that it takes. And it's not just the labor on the project. It's like, what are you sacrificing in your day-to-day life to be sitting at a computer instead? Like you're going to be losing a lot of your social commitments. You're losing opportunity cost for other jobs that you could be doing. Sure, you're going to learn a lot. You are, especially in code and art and all the fun things that can transfer to other jobs. But you are sacrificing friendship and sunshine, just opportunities to go on dates with your girlfriend, like going camping with your dog. You could be doing anything else other than bullshit
yeah.
for years, for literally years. And the sacrifice cannot be overstated. And no one's going to know. They're going to play your game. It may suck. It may be phenomenal, but they're not going to know what was happening behind the scenes. That stuff is invisible. So, like it is hard.
It's kind of like being a TikTok content creator, because like you're swiping through the videos so quick that when somebody likes your video and stuff, and like they give it an updude or whatever and say, ha, that was kind of funny, and then they keep swiping, and then when anybody asks you like, hey, what was that video you liked the other day, and your only means of description is just describing the name or the video itself, because you
Right.
don't know who actually made made the video, because it doesn't prioritize that. And it's kind of the same with modding, because I think a lot more of the modding scene is like reputational. But like even then you just know like the project itself, and unless you become a noteworthy figure separate, or maybe not separate from the project, but like because of the project, nobody's gonna know who you are unless they dig into like the nitty gritty. Like everybody knows Michael Bay, everybody knows Steven Seagal, Chris Hemsworth, stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
But
the headliners.
Yeah.
You know the credits that run at the beginning of the movie, but you don't really know who the key grip is.
Exactly. Nobody remembers the key grip. Nobody remembers the gaff. Nobody.
Well, we remember the gaffer. We remember him. We're G&E. We know what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I also have a bit of experience in the film industry, and it's like there's so many people that just get like left out because the headline is the project itself. And it's kind of a bummer.
It is. I mean, it's kind of like you're worshiping at this temple of this god, like you're such a peasant before it. Like your ego kind of has to die a little bit to do it, because it is so big. It's so much beyond you. Like, and you're going to be invisible at the end. Like if you have an ego and you're doing this for your ego, you're not going to survive. Like,
yeah, that was one of the things that, like, because I don't know, it's interesting because one of the big talking points when it came to the Frontier is like, oh, these people, like the developers are just doing it for like clout and stuff like that. But like no, if you get, because like you said, you lose like years off of your life working on something that you're never going to get paid for, that you're probably never going to get properly recognized for. And like you're doing that to have that on a resume. It's like there's other things that you can do in that same time period that are way better for your resume.
You are doing the work so that you can have an opportunity to then do the work again.
It's so
like
backwards.
That is what modding as a resume piece does for you. It's like it opens the door to then prove yourself again in a professional theater if you're lucky. So if you made a lot of your mistakes on your mod, because honestly, because it is for free, it is a lower stakes environment. You can fuck up, and that's okay. You will survive that fuck up. If you're making the same scope of fuck up in a professional environment, you'll never work again. So it's good to have a project like this that is a dry run, that you can make stupid fucking decisions and then watch the internet roast your balls off. Because they're going to carve you open into little tiny, find whatever heartstrings you have left and tear them apart. And that's good for you. You have to find, if you come to the point where you're just like, I can't handle this level of criticism, it's really just like sickening to me. Like, it'll kill you. But if you accept it and you let it transform you, you genuinely take it to heart about how much better you can do next time and how serious you have to be to accomplish that, then it'll make you better. So it's good to have failures, because you learn from failure, I think, better than you do from success. Because if you just keep making successes, you get the Bethesda problem. They have like one hit after another that's making like ultra platinum AAA game of the year. You get complacent because you're living in this bubble of people that are really just like, everything you do is amazing. Eventually you get to a point where you haven't fucked up in so long in a way that you have to adapt to, that you no longer learn. And I think that's kind of a dangerous place to be, especially in games, because it feels like when you're making a game, also talking about how much you sacrifice for these things, they are kind of temporary. Like, they do have a lifespan to them. And we can talk about, preservation of games and how important the history of gaming is and how easy it is to lose that stuff. But games really do have a kind of a window of where the popularity, getting fewer and fewer people playing them. So yeah, you have to adapt to the times, because games are always changing on the forefront of what people are really truly interested in and what they're comparing it to. And if you've lost, focus, you're still trying to make games like you did 20 years ago, you're not gonna succeed today. Like what worked 20 years ago is probably not going to work for you today. You have to do something new with that. You can iterate on it, absolutely, but you have to find new ways to keep doing that, and that means you have to keep your pulse on what's happening today. That's very, very hard when you're living a developer lifestyle, because we're craftsmen hermits. Like, we don't get out a lot. We don't even have much of a chance to play other games because we're so busy. And that can be toxic to you. It can really hurt you.
I believe it was Oscar Wilde that said, experience is just the name we give to our mistakes. And
yeah.
In modding, it seems like you have to make a lot of mistakes before you can finally get to something good.
Yeah, and Samuel Beckett and Know How On had that famous line of, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, fail again, fail better.
Yeah.
So I really believe in that a lot. I think that's a very important line. Not just because I love Samuel Beckett. I've read almost all of his work. I've performed some of his work. But you really do learn. I think it's a fundamental unit of understanding and intelligence is failure and the recovery from it. Mm-hmm. So if you're not failing, and if you're unwilling to fuck up and make mistakes and then understand why it was a mistake and then correct for it, then you're just not learning. And I think modding is a great place to do that, because you do get feedback. You do have the benefit of, if you're an artist, the code for the game is already done for you, and you can just focus on making your art. If you're a gameplay engineer and you just really cool, interesting designs, you can focus on just that portion of the game. The rest of the open world, all the quests, everything else is done for you, and you've got an audience who's willing to play it. So that's where the modding benefits come in. But the downsides are, like, if you're trying to do something like narrative based, like New California was, you're going up against New Vegas, which is a little bit like, I'm going to compare my indie theater, my first time writing an indie theater, to like Shakespeare. Yeah. And good luck, kid. You have absolutely no gloves on. You do something.
Yeah, like it's
every which way.
This is a bare knuckle fight here. There's no ref.
Yeah. Like you are going up against God. Right. He is going to strike you down. Like, Yeah, the weights are definitely not in comes to narrative, but for gameplay, you can improve on New Vegas just by doing things that were popular in like 2013. Like,
Right.
because New Vegas is a terrible shooter. It's not a particularly beautiful game, like by any stretch of the imagination. The shaders are absolutely just dog water.
Yeah.
But, so you can improve on New Vegas in a myriad of ways. But if you're trying to compete with like the voice acting talent of like Chris Christopherson, like good luck.
Do you think the Fallout 4 New Vegas remaster, rework, however you want to say it, do you think that mod is going to improve a lot of the issues that that New Vegas had, as far as, like, as you said, like, the graphics, the gunplay, stuff like that? Do you think that, like, porting it over from New Vegas, maybe not porting, but like reimagine it in Fallout 4's engine, is going to help alleviate a lot of the more, I guess, surface level criticisms?
I mean, for me, you're asking the wrong guy because I really like doing new and original content. I don't like rehashing stuff that already exists. I personally don't get pleasure out of it.
Mhm.
Like, you can play Oblivion now with this remaster. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but it's playing Oblivion again, and I don't need to play Oblivion again. Like the same thing is going to be true for New Vegas. Is that looking better and playing better with the gunplay and the character movement controls? That is you. Anything is an improvement. Fallout 4 is 10 years old. I think it still looks okay. I mean, it never looked great at launch. That's not really Bethesda's strong suit, especially in the engine that they're using. But it's yeah, it'll be an improvement. But if you don't have that original voice acting, which is an EULA, that's licensed terms and agreements. Now you're dealing with the estates of some of the actors because they have passed away. You have to go get permission from the estates. There's licensing. There's lawyers. I mean, those games are good because of the times that they were made and the people who made them. They are not good because you can repeat what they did, right? So
Mhm.
you do have to resurrect the writing, which, then you owe deference to the writers and get their opinions because you owe them that. And then the same thing is true for the voice acting talent. How are you going to negotiate those contracts to do that again?
Exactly. It's kind of like the whole issue with AI, and more so specifically like utilizing it for voice synthesization.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, AI is a whole fucking kettle of fishes. There is a path forward for artificial intelligence. Ethical, sane, is rational, and it results in a net gain for humanity across the board. And then there is the way that we are doing it, which
Yeah.
is the opposite of that.
Improper use of technology. Ever
Yeah.
since cavemen, we were fucking around with fire and doing it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the nature of learning how to make things and the nature of failure and the role of failure in intelligence. Artificial intelligence really has two epistemological methods that it can use to understand the world around it. Either it can use training data, which raises, some ethical questions about copyright and the nature of that. But it can also learn through simulation. And we have not yet invented a machine that can simulate the universe accurately and learn from it in a way that makes any fucking sense. So instead, we have, you know, a machine that is attempting to imitate humanity and doing a real job of it. It is much closer to the way that we think than some people think it is. And it is much more of a black box than people appreciate too. A lot of people just don't know what these things are fucking really doing.
Right.
And that's just not speaking from ignorance. It's literally just like they are so complex on the inside, they largely made themselves. And that is terrifying because you don't know what they're going to do.
We'll
But
we'll earmark this, and then we'll meet up next year, and then we'll see
yeah,
how wrong AI has proved you, because it's evolved like sevenfold in the last like 6 months.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, learning from the position of recreate from scratch. The famous Carl Sagan line: "If you want to invent the universe, if you want to bake an apple pie from scratch, first you must invent the universe."
Yeah.
But it's like if you want to do it that way, good luck, because we're not particularly great at physics as a species. We have giant holes in our understanding of the universe. We barely understand how our own brains work, and most of the time we don't understand that in a practical way. So like, yeah, I mean, it's just a very difficult problem, and the way that they're doing it now, training data and these neural networks, that is the way to do it in our century, to understand what these things are doing. And it's, it raises ethics concerns. You can do it ethically. You can do it on public domain works, and you should be. But then what do you owe to the public who created that data? Well, you basically just invented a machine that is fundamentally public. It belongs to the public. How do you make profit on that? So you say, well, fuck that. I'm going to break the law. I'm going to violate everything possible. And then, politically, I'm going to make sure that nobody can vote against me. That doesn't seem fair or rational. No wonder people are rioting in the streets, right?
Typical capitalism.
So, yeah, fun. What a joy. But if you look up, there are some projects out there that are using AI to make genius quality work that's truly, really fucking funny. There's one called NeuralViz. Have a show called Unanswered Oddities, where it's just like this universe where you've got these like mutant Muppets that look like they came out of like Farscape. And they're living in like bizarro versions of Earth, like in the future, and they're reminiscing about the old humans, like the humans that used to live before us. And it's performed and acted and written by one guy, and he records his face and then deep fakes like a Mid-Journey image on top of that and animates it. And then I think he uses 11 labs to modulate his voice to sound like a different character. And it is fucking genius. The show is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And I genuinely look forward to it like I look forward to like Prestige TV. Like, it's so funny, it's so smart, and it's this cutting satire, and he's doing such a good job. I can't praise him enough. That is where AI could go, and that is where it is good. And then you've got Industrial Light and Magic putting one of its lead guys out there. I'm not even going to put his name out there because I don't want to name and shame him. But like, he used AI, and it's an embarrassment to our species.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, like, we're going to show you the future of a Star Wars encyclopedia and all of the interesting species that live in this universe. And it's just like, here is a rabbit with some extra color on it.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Oh, those were so bad. One of them was literally just like, here's a porcupine, but it's blue, or it was like a hedgehog or something.
Yeah, like, here, let's put a machine that has spent billions of learning hours on the internet into your hands, and this is what you're going to use it for?
No.
Really?
No.
AI should not be doing the creative work for you because it sucks at it. Because it's mediocre. It can only ever retread paths. It can make some really interesting assumptions that then, they can become a very interesting fractal path to lead you something creative with your participation. But you can't just prompt the thing and expect to get good quality shit. So I don't feel like AI is going to be actually, until we do what NeuralViz is doing and pioneering right now, where you have a live actor who's doing this performance and you're just using the deep fakes to make it look dope, right? You shouldn't be prompting this shit. You should still have artists like making your environments and purposefully with an attention to detail of the craft, and just using the machines, not in a legacy way. You do have to innovate. Think about how machines can change your dynamics, but you should still be focusing on, first and foremost, on the craft. Like, the machine, you will still be working 60 hours a week. You're just using a new machine to do it.
Yeah, it's a lot like Auto Tune when it first came out.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. Like, people hear it and then they get obsessed with it, and then you get backlash that absolutely hates it, and then 20 years later, you can't even hear it anymore because you don't know it's being used because people figured it out.
Yeah,
They found the method. So you're going to get a lot of shit every time a new set of tools come out, just because the early adopters are just exploring what's possible, and a lot of what's possible is going to suck. Eventually, they will build their way up and do something very, very.
When we were talking a little bit earlier, you because we talked briefly about like some of the But before the interview, I believe we talked a little bit, very briefly, about some upcoming projects that you have, because you're doing your own game development stuff, but then you're also still working on modding projects. When it comes to, because I mentioned that I had become chronically unhealthily addicted to Manor Lords, which is a city builder game, and I'm huge on city builder games. And you're working on a city builder game. But you also mentioned that you're working on another Fallout project, Fallout Morningstar. What can you tell us about that?
Project.
Oh, it's not?
No. Morningstar is our own intellectual property built from scratch.
Oh, okay.
It's applying all of the lessons that we learned on Fallout modding, because co-creator Kent Hager, he is working with me on this, and he worked on a couple of different Fallout mods, one of which was for Sim Settlements 2. I can't remember what the name of it is right now. It just fell out of my head, but it's got like millions of downloads. It's been, abandoned for years. He worked on some Minecraft mods that were really amazing. He's Star Sector mods, which were really amazing. And then finally, we worked on Save Our Ship 2 for RimWorld. And that one, obviously, is kind of like the pinnacle achievement over there for us, where you can build a ship in RimWorld, lift it off of the ground, and go to space. How fucking cool is that? I mean, it's an obvious thing, but then we took it a few steps further and put some actual creativity into it. We gave it new ways to end the game, like a new quest, and we also added ship-to-ship combat. And my favorite tool that came out of that experiment was a shipbuilding creation kit. I mean, obviously, we're going to call it the creation kit because of our love for Bethesda. But we called it the Save Our Ship 2 creation kit, and you can build a ship in the game and then export it as a file that's portable, and you can play that ship as an enemy or as a new starting ship in somebody else's game. And how cool is that? So we really liked that idea, and some of the technology that we had to innovate to make that possible kind of inspired us to make our own game in a genre similar to that. And we're reusing that to create level, at least the inspiration of that to create our own level builder over in Unity. And we've been working on that now since 2021. My buddy Curtis, who's one of our contractors, a really awesome guy, he's been working on that level builder. We have James, who made the Melee animation mod from World. He came in to help us animate our characters. And then Allegra, who's our artist friend, who's coming in. She does almost all of our 2D work, and I do almost all the 3D stuff. But yeah, you make little cities out of these modular buildings, and each building can have like randomized contents. But it can also have quest markers in it, so they can build what we have kind of like a radiant quest system that we're calling expectation, not to set expectations too high. There is a pun there. But it allows characters to project themselves into the future based on their personality traits and say, what do I want first and foremost for food and shelter and security and personal pride, and then also like loyalty to my religion and my faction. What does my town need in the future? And then how do we go and accomplish and get that stuff? And that's what generates our quests in the game, is that you have all these characters in your town with these competing interests and motivations. And while they're working together, for the most part, they do come into conflict with each other. I think that system is really interesting. So you build up a town and you go explore the world, and you have characters that actually have like a reason to do that stuff. And I think that's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, that kind of sounds a little bit like 11. It just came out like recently, like as of the time of this recording, I think like 3 days ago. That kind of sounds like a game by 11-bit studios called The Alters. Which it's sort of the same concept, but funnily enough, it's in the reverse. It sounds like you're sending people sort of forward in time, and sort of like customizing the sort of person you want that other person to become, like the idealized person. With the alters, the basic concept is like the road less traveled, like, oh, what if I had made this decision in my life? What if I made that decision in my life? And so the character in that game utilizes this machine that is basically able to look back on their previous memories and identify like key moments in their history where if they did something different here, it would have resulted in a different, timeline. Say like, oh, I decided to take that corporate job, and as a result, I now, get into, more scientific, more office driven stuff. And now, instead of being just like a builder, boom, here's the alternate version of me, that's a scientist and knows how to do like research and a bunch of sciencey stuff. It's a really interesting concept. And it's not at all surprising from 11-bit studios, because if you know the name, then you know that they also made like Frostpunk and This War of Mine. Phenomenal games in and of themselves. I haven't finished the Alters yet, but everything that 11-bit studio does is outstanding and amazing. But again, that's like sort of the inverse, the going backwards kind of thing. With this is Morningstar that we're talking about, right? This is the okay.
Yeah.
I got a little lost there. Like, you're talking about RimWorld, then you're talking about the Minecraft, and I'm like,
but we did a bunch of mods, but for the most part, I think the modding history, as the training wheels are off now. We're doing it professional.
Yeah.
We have a private investor who's putting their money behind us, so we have to do it, like adults. It is for me, I get to work at 10 and I quit at 6. So every day, whether I like it or not. So, and then some days I cheat and I go a little bit longer, but that's just life. I don't let my contractors do that. I have to get on their butts sometimes, because I know they'll spend like a 60-hour week if they're not. If I'm not careful, I'm not on top of them. But yeah, it's a fully adult game with like an LLC and operating agreement and all that fun stuff that we have to keep in mind, that we do have financial obligations to it. So that does raise the stakes quite a bit. We don't have a publisher, at least not yet. I am talking to publishers, though. We've had some recommended to us to talk to. Not really ready to say who, but there's potential there.
He's talking about Todd Howard.
I wish I was. I would love to work for them. I don't know if I want to work for ZeniMax. Like, I don't think I want.
No, they did recently like unionize.
Oh, that's cool. Did they go RWA or they IAT?
I got no idea. I just saw that they won a union thing.
Oh, sweet. Well, good for them.
Yeah,
good for them. I hope it's IAT. Yeah, it's probably going to be RWA, because they're more active on the East Coast.
I could see that. That would make sense if they're like the East Coast branch, the big one on the East Coast. That would make sense. Speaking of, funnily enough, in because I joked, I said like Todd Howard bought it. 5 hours ago, like today, news actually broke that that the Nexus has actually been sold to an outside developer, or a different entity. I made a joke of it on Blue Sky, like, oh man, Todd Howard bought Nexus. This is a game changer. The biggest troll in history.
That would be really funny. Honestly, I'm just proud of Robin for he gave that site 20 something years of his life.
Like, 25 years.
Yeah, he started in his 20s, so you can imagine how long it's been just dealing with the bullshit that modders put him through.
Yeah.
Because it is the most dramatic community on Earth. Let's just be fair here. They're to deal with human beings.
There's been more than one headline made about drama related to the Nexus mod.
It is like you are sacrificing your life to people who seem to hate you. I hope Robin got out healthy. I hope he has very, very good insurance who's taking care of his psychiatric care, because getting out of that madhouse has got to feel good.
Oh,
but
no,
I wish him the absolute best of luck. I'm really proud of him for sticking with it for so long and putting up with so much shit. And I think he did, for the most part, a pretty good job. People can disagree. I don't care. I think he did a lot of good work for us. He supported us on New California even when we were crashing his servers when we released. So I appreciate him.
Do you think that that Nexus is going to change all that much? Being a big grown up boy who works on big grown up boy projects such as yourself, when it comes to Nexus mod specifically, and obviously there's there's only so much of a frame of reference that you have as a modder who has worked with the site to put out products or to put out projects.
Mhm.
And as somebody who's running your own game development company. But from a more so like professional standpoint, do you see much changing about Nexus mods? Obviously, we don't have any idea as of yet. Anyway, we don't know who the buyer is. We don't
I
know
thought it was
what.
somebody. I thought it was somebody from the community that was already part of the group.
I don't know. I saw a post on there that was speculating that it was this other company that is like super monetization heavy. So there's some
Oh, fun.
speculation that like, oh, now there's going to be like subscription services, which there already is a subscription service, the premium download thing. But there's like, oh, it's going to be like paid mods and this, that, the other thing. I don't know anything. I very strongly doubt that because that would probably just destroy Nexus mods, especially since a lot of people have, a sour taste over Starfield's creation mods. Which
Don't get me
only
started.
yeah. Well,
Don't get me started.
it's weird because I saw an article the other day that said only like maybe it wasn't even art, maybe it was Reddit, I can't remember, but like somebody did the math and only like 2% of the mods on creation are actually paid mods.
Mm. Well, even then, I mean, it's such a fucking difficult proposition because modding has such a variable level of quality. And we've talked about how difficult it is, right? One of the most bare minimum things that you can do as an artist is just reskin a mesh. Because you're really, especially in these days when you have procedural texturing through like substance and things like that, as long as you have some nice normal maps and height maps, you can make a new texture based on that. And if you're selling that for money, I mean, life is not fair. It's not reasonable. It's under no obligation to be fair. And that's just the way that business has followed the evils of causation, is that you can charge money for perceived value. They will spend money on it. Probably because they don't know how trivial it is to do that job. They just don't know. It really is. You could learn how to do this today. And I mean, anybody could. If you've never made a texture before, if you can get a free trial of Substance and just some random mesh and the base textures, watch a tutorial. By this evening, you will be making a new set of interesting looking texture. It may not be good. It may take you a few years to train up to become competent, but when you're done, you'll be doing, in an afternoon. Now, if you want to make a model from scratch, that's a different proposition. Now you're learning a lot. Now you're doing tons and tons and tons of work. And maybe I could start to see justifying selling like a new weapon or like a whole set of armors that will be really dope. But not just a fucking skin, guys. Come on.
No, yeah.
Like you can, especially when it's even worse when it's a color mask that's driving the skin color. Like
Yeah, a blue
a color
gun.
mask, yeah, it just colors a certain region on the texture a different color, and then you pay 200 atom points for that. What? It's a variable, guys.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
keep it in. Like you're literally paying for a couple of bits being flipped. That's just, to me, it's sacrilege. And now if you can make a living off of that, I'm not going to argue with 21st kinds of fucked up down, left, and right. If you can make a living doing something, I'm not going to knock you. Like, for Christ's sake. But also just, if you're going to sell something, it should be as beneficial to the audience as it is. Like that's my belief.
Yeah,
So
like
you put
something
out something of substance.
original in a sense. Like, it's
Right.
easy to just like throw like that's one of the things that I think gets levied against Fallout 76 a lot. They put out they have like, oh, here's like, the new paint job for like this gun or this armor and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that's cool. That's usually something that's like on the scoreboard and you like grind for, which, incentivization to play the game. Oh, like, oh, brand new concepts. But then when it comes to stuff that's like new assets, like some of the crazier looking power armor we get, or some of like the new guns and stuff, at least it's something that's more original in its actual appearance. Like you said, anybody can, retexture or recolor a gun. But when you're actually getting into like reshaping or designing something new, then it's an entirely different thing. And then
Yeah.
when it comes to like modding specifically in like Creation Club or paid Nexus mods, if it's going to happen, it's a different level of like, okay, there was a little bit of additional effort that went into this compensation, maybe for something like the Nexus. I think that paid mods would be a terrible, terrible idea. But for a program that from its inception, like, the Creation Club or Creations, where it's sort of like the place for modders who want to design on sort of a semi unofficial, like affiliate kind of program. Like,
Which I think is going in the right direction. I don't think we're seeing positive qualities out of that yet. I'm hoping that they begin hiring ambitious motherfuckers who are the most dangerous kind because they're wild cards. Passionate is just another word for crazy. And if you're hiring crazy, you're taking a big risk. And I understand that being fucking batshit myself.
yeah. You got to
Like, we are
remember.
difficult people. We can be very recalcitrant and very belligerent. But if we believe in what we're making and we truly, genuinely want to give it to our audience because we think it's going to be quality for them, we'll fight for it. And if you can hire somebody who's really interesting quests, like a series of quests maybe that tie together, if you can finance that, they can hire voice talent that's not just somebody they got for free. Really big benefit there. On equipment that isn't for free, so they have consistent audio quality throughout. And the storytelling is actually pretty good. It doesn't have to be phenomenal, it has to be pretty good. Then, by all means, please start releasing DLCs that have quest content in them. But
Yeah.
if you're just nickeling and diming people for a new piece of empty bottle floating in space, like, that's as close to predatory as I
Yeah.
could think. Like, I know someone's going to spend money on that, but is that a good decision for anybody involved? No.
Yeah. When it comes to like Creations specifically, because I think that when it comes to like Fallout 76 and the Atom Shop, there is a lot of stuff which like, like, oh, this is like, it's too much for this. The like even some of the stuff that's like, oh, this is just sort of like a reshaped version of like, a tool bench or a chair or, this, that, or the other thing. It's a little kind of like, is this, really necessary? But then it becomes sort of more a like, people are going to spend money however they want kind of stuff. But when it comes to like creation, or like when it comes to Creations specifically, so like we're thinking Starfield. With that specifically, what are your thoughts on just that, on Creations as a potential platform for, as we said, modders who actually put in a consistent effort, an earnest attempt to put out stuff that is, that Bethesda deems worthy of being associated with its official launch and its official game network. What's your headspace on that as far as it goes, or as far as it relates to beneficial towards the modders, beneficial towards the players, and beneficial towards Bethesda and its existing reputations, and more so the way like it designs games as sort of like modding hubs, because Bethesda has a really like integral symbiotic connection and relationship with the modding community.
Well, I will admit that there's people give the creation engine as a tool set a lot of shit because it is prone to some really silly looking bugs like the T-pose bug. There are reasons for why that happens, like things loading in kind of funky and you see them all broken up into their shattered bits. There's a reason for that. What it is good at is telling stories in emergent ways in branching quests in an open world. And very few engines out of the box can approach even a fraction of that. So it is a very powerful tool. And for the most part, it is very in use most of the time. There are some things that I think can be improved, but that's true for every engine. If you're going to be making a game and expecting modders to come and mod with you, you need to make a game first and foremost that don't suck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if people are not enjoying your game, they're not going to enjoy modding it either. So that's kind of where that that stops. Your game will not be saved by the modders. You have to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, your mic cut out there a little bit, so there was just a lot of quiet, like right at the end. So I'm like, did he finish the sentence? What happened here?
So, yeah, like I said,
yeah.
if you want to have a game that modders enjoy, you have to first make a game that is good. And like the modders are not going to save a game if it's just not good. Like you have to save your own game first, and then mod it after. That's kind of the curse of modding, isn't it? Though, like you
Right.
have to make a game that is so good somebody wants to add to it. But if it's so good, what is there left to add?
Exactly.
There comes a point when you're adding something, and that's really just taking away. We did that on Save Our Ship too, and some people argue that we fucked up RimWorld by adding the spaceships and this combat layer because it's just too much. They don't like that. It takes away from that ground-based colony approach, and I don't disagree with them. Like Save Our Ship 2 really did go out on a limb as far as go and try to do something very new and innovative and experimental. And of course, Ludian just this past week released I think it's called Odyssey, their new DLC, and that allows the player to build some kind of a spaceship. We still don't really know what the context of that is. And then that thing can go into space. So they're kind of retreading what we did. And I wish them the absolute best of luck because, obviously I think it's a really good concept. It's a really good idea. We did pitch it to them once upon a long time ago, back in 2020 during the pandemic. We had nothing else to do, and we were being very ambitious. So we went ahead and we sent Ludian a preview of what we had made, along with like a little trailer showing off the features and even some of the code so they could see what we were doing. And they're just like, you know what, this is really great, guys. I appreciate that, but we don't accept pitches. And I was like, well, okay. I just wanted to give them the first right of refusal. Like, we're going to make this space mod. It's going to be pretty popular, I'm pretty sure. And it was, in fact, very, very popular. And I was one of them have the opportunity to know doing that so that they could do it first if they wanted to. I think that's respectful. Okay. So 5 years later, they come out with their own version. They did not talk to us. I think we could have imparted a lot of great wisdom to them. So it's a little bit of a bummer we didn't get a chance to do that. And some people think it's shady. I'm not going to disagree with them. I just think it's a counterproductive argument. So we do have our own game. We can go do our own cool stuff. It doesn't really matter. So it's you can take away from a game by features that expand it in a way that changes the paradigm of that experience, where it trivializes the resources that you gained at the game. You get a high-end weapon at the end of the game that trivializes the beginning. So your 9mm pistol is now completely worthless. You might as well just throw it away or turn it into scrap or whatever your game to do for economy. And then you've got this new fancy gun. But really what all that does is, what if the player had an emotional connection to that 9mm? It's like their special 9mm. Maybe they tricked it out with a bunch of cool things. Maybe they have a character who feels like they should be embodying somebody who uses that weapon. And if you take that away, then your game starts to become less and less of a personal investment, and it becomes more and more of just like, I have to get this next thing. Like I have to achieve this next thing to get this next other opportunity. And it stops feeling like home in a way because of that. So what makes Bethesda games so good for modding is that they have home quality where you can add a whole bunch of new content to it, and it doesn't take anything away from what the game was offering to begin with, because it's really just about that experience of like you're customizing your experience to the way that you want to play it in this sandbox. Whereas something that's more linear, or in the case of Starfield, something that just doesn't know what it's trying to be. It feels like it's trying to be 4 different games, and the building of ships. There's a very specific kind of person. We encountered this on Saber Ship too. There's a very specific kind of player that building shit, and they will do that to exhaustion for weeks. They will spend 1,000 hours in your game just building things, and they will ignore all of the other content. Or maybe they'll just play it once and they'll think that was very satisfying. Now I know.
Yeah, it's
I'm just going to build stuff.
Kind of a coin flip on that.
Right, exactly. But if your game doesn't support building stuff, like I think Fallout 4 really, it is fundamentally the story is a one shot and it's extremely linear. You get to the end of it and there's some path, kind of, sort of, but they're not very rewarding to experience them like they were. You can compare it to like New California or even the original Fallout 1 and 2. Had so many ways you could complete those games. Every time you play it, it's like you're playing a different game almost. Fallout 4 doesn't really feel like that. So I felt like the building was a place. Maybe in 76, which is more of like an open sandbox with less of a main narrative. Maybe it works better there, but I've never played it. So I don't really know. People can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like building as a sandbox, when your game starts to become more like Minecraft, you're not really telling the hard-hitting stories that Fallout is trying to go for. Like, you're not saving Tandy from the cons and trying to sneak in or murder them, pay them off, or do some other quest that brings a character with you that convinces the cons that you're a badass. Like, you're not getting those kinds of like interesting branching narratives anymore. It stops being fun. So what are you adding to this game that is taking away from it? You really do have to think about that before you're too excited about adding features.
With all of the new things that are changing when it comes to the modding community, not just for Fallout or Bethesda, but like, you know, modding in general, for a lot of, because more and more communities are starting to become more modder friendly. Obviously Baldur's Gate 3 was a big one. I saw recently that the developer of Stellar Blade, funnily enough, appreciates all the, you know, all the hot mods, for lack of a better term. But wants modders to like up their games and, you know, make some more interesting stuff. Which I thought was kind of funny from the developer of Stellar Blade. But
Koreans are a different breed of game dev. Like they've got a whole other culture, and their language doesn't in English. So I assume what he was really saying is, we accomplished the sexy, please make something fun.
Very likely. The article that I read even said, like, you know, there's a bit of a language barrier, but like, we think that basically this is what he's saying. Yeah.
That would make a lot of sense for what I know of Korean developers.
Oh yeah. But when it comes to the larger concept, more people, you know, more games and more studios opening themselves up for modding, the use or the implementation of more and more paid marketplaces, where developers can, or where modders can put content out and then get compensated for it. The primary one that comes to mind, maybe not the primary, but one of the bigger ones, is the Minecraft marketplace. And then like a lot of the drama that we've seen played out with, if we scale it back to Fallout and Bethesda, a lot of the drama that we've seen with larger modding content, the
present company excluded, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. Nobody's ever said that the start of New California is the best part and everything after that sucked.
Never once.
Which, me personally, I think it's kind of the opposite, but I also would have liked to have spent more time in the vault. But then like, oh, you go out into the open world and everything sucks. And it's like, what are you talking about? That's where 90% of the game happens.
Well, I would say that that's honestly a valid criticism. And I have the same criticism myself. I did, even before we released, if you go back and read my blog posts, for as scintillating as they were. You go back and read my development blogs, which I did one every single me precious little 20-something self,
right?
Just fretting about how the fact that we didn't have anywhere big this place is, and I was angry at myself for letting it happen. I saw it coming like a train. Like it's not like I'm ignoring. I'm telling people that it exists. So I really wanted there to be more content to support how big the open world was, and it needed that. And you know, to the credit of the people after it released, we get Fig. You know, he's one of my good buddies. I love him to death. He came in with a guy named Eric and made this place called Odyssey. And, you know, Billy and him put it together. And it's a really fun quest that you can find between the relay station and the highway just out in the middle of nowhere. Because I did set it in the Cajon Pass of San Bernardino, right? Mm-hmm. This is the middle of fucking nowhere.
Right.
And people who live out there, I mean, it's a very small number of people, but the people who grew up out there, the number one things that they remember about the pass are just walking through the desert, exploring things, going out hunting and like getting a mule deer and it disappears into the grass. And those are the kinds of experiences that you have growing up in that region. You're very used to like it being, a real life walking simulator because you live in the past. Like you're going to go climb the Mormon rocks and it's going to be this beautiful, pristine desert with a highway down the middle of it. And that's what I wanted New California to feel like. Is that a good gaming decision? Absolutely not. It is boring as fuck. It is empty, but it is realistic for the people that appreciate that. I being one of them, I'm not getting paid. I just have to enjoy this. So I was having fun just like imagining, just like walking in this cool desert. That's what I wanted to get out of it.
And
Sorry to my audience that I put you through that. It worked for the people that like it.
Yeah.
Okay. It worked for the people that like it. Maybe not all of the Fallout modding and playing community, maybe not.
It's always, the they say the customer's always right, but sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's you as a developer who are just, you're jerking off.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for them. And that I had to make on a budget of fuck you. I had to make a scope of a quest mod in an environment. And if I can have the excuse of you are walking through a post-apocalyptic hellscape that is barren and lifeless, that really cuts down on the amount of fat that you have to chew, right? It really does reduce a lot of questions to, oh, you found a skeleton by the side of the road with a note. Okay, I can make that in a reasonable amount of time. Now, do I want to make an entire raider quest line that sprawls across the desert? You run into all these really big factions, have each one of them have like a cool little subquest to understand their tribal background. You've got the Black Vultures, who are these Mexicans that have come up from the South, and they're speaking Spanish, and you have to figure out how to learn to like talk to them a little bit through your translator on your Pip-Boy. And they've got a cool like culture that's just based around water and respect and like vengeance in a way. That's really cool. You've got these Vault Vikings, you've got the She, you've got these other little factions that are. I really like that we put together like these cool little subcultures, and they did each get one tiny little quest to explore their background because that's all that I could afford. And that was a success. Those felt really good to me, like exploring the different cultural backgrounds of the different tribes and then uniting them underneath your own like Revan-kissed, rebellious, overthrowing the big bad guy vibe. That was cool. That was very successful. It did need more side quests to flesh that out, though, and that would have been very, very cool.
Yeah.
But I had what I had, and I did what I did.
It for like the scope, because again, we're talking about like the first ever mod project of that size.
Is it really the first of that size? I don't know, because I played a lot of, and those are the ones that inspired me. But they were all for other games. The ones that inspired me for Fallout, there was somebody named Fire Lady Mini Quest for Heaven, which is almost all interiors, but there was just a ton of really cool, beautiful work in. And I believe she passed away in a car accident, and then her brother picked it up and finished the last 2 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought that was really inspiring.
Yeah.
And there was also, for Fallout 3, there was Alton, Illinois. A guy named EMH, I don't remember what his real name is, he basically made the area around him in Alton, Illinois. And that one inspired me to then make what I made, because that was like, oh, well, it's possible. You can do that with these tools. And he obviously he put out some tutorials and some explanations for how to do that. So yeah, that's really what inspired me, was like other mods that I thought were very cool. New California was huge. It did take me 10 years to finish it. Most of that time was me being in the film industry and being pulled away from the computer for months at a time, and then being off again also for many at a time.
Yeah.
So like it was like, if you compress all the time out, maybe Rick and I only really spent like 4.5 years, like with all the time squeezed out that we weren't working on it, but it took a decade to accomplish that.
Right. I think more so, maybe not the first of its kind, but the first one to gain such notoriety. The first mod project to like really hit that, like, oh, like it's a whole new DLC for the game.
It was like a DLC. It just wasn't like full Fallout game, and I think that's what people really wanted out. They came expecting like Fallout 5, and I gave them more than a DLC's worth. Like, it was basically like all of New Vegas's DLCs combined worth of
Right.
dialogue. 14,000 lines of dialogue versus how many are in the DLCs? I think they said what, 2,500 or something really low like that.
I could see that.
Right. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
14,000 lines of voice dialogue, a giant open space, hundreds of interiors, just tons and tons of new art, new weapons, communities, some of which I made, most of which came from mod packs from like Drag Body and those kinds of really cool people.
Hmm.
And Jack, obviously Jack Wong, who I talked about earlier, Wanamingo. But yeah, there's just tons and tons of really cool stuff in that project, and I'm really really proud. Like almost every time that somebody would donate something to New California, it would be very memorable and cool. And there were a lot of attempts to add stuff that, the engine just really fought people, and they would come in with inexperience, not knowing how to use the tools, and then they just wouldn't succeed. And that was always a bummer to see because what they were working on was very, very cool. And I was really sad to see that just like not make the project. But the stuff that did make it in was almost all really dope.
When it comes to the like, because again, we've talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about the like a lot of the drama and the hardship of creating a mod project, dealing with the community, um,
Mm.
it evolving platforms like Creation that allow people to potentially earn revenue from the mods that they put out. The changes that Nexus Mods is going to be experiencing, the evolution and the deeper inclusion of AI in modding projects, both voiced and otherwise. When you look forward at the future of modding, Fallout modding, Bethesda modding, game modding in general, as a developer yourself, with the experience that you have under your belt and the level of notoriety that you've achieved, both as an early developer and now a current or an early modder and a current game developer,
Mhm.
what is your perception of the future, and how would you best advise players, modders, enthusiasts to reflect upon what this potential future would be, um, and how to sort of adapt to it? Because I think especially with AI, it's going to change and it's going to advance regardless of, whatever, our opinions or our beliefs or wants are. And really, it's something that we have to adapt to. So again, the
Yeah.
concept of modding going forward with new technologies, new platforms, how do we adapt to that? And or what does it look like, and how would we be best equipped to adapt to it?
Well, I mean, if we talk about artificial intelligence in the abstract, we're doing a disservice to the tools and we're doing a disservice to our audience. So we have to get really, really specific as soon as we can. If you're talking about using AI as a tool for modding, what are we approaching first and foremost? So let's open up our engine. Let's look at it. The AI currently does not know how to look at your screen. It will, in the very near future, be able to do that, which is terrifying. But it will be able to start using the tools that are available to it to learn the scripting language, and it will be able to execute scripts and put them into the game that you can then share with other people. So it can code a lot of your stuff for you. Is it going to be good at that in the near future? No. It's going to take a few years. And in that meantime, if you are not a competent coder yourself, if you're not a competent programmer and you're using this AI just to like shotgun vibe code, whatever it is you're going to do, you're going to make some really stupid decisions. And it's going to be on you. It's not going to be on the AI. You did that. If you make a mod that crashes somebody's game and erases all their saves because the AI thought that was what you wanted, that's on you. So the liability of artificial intelligence is being a dog, as more than like having like, an artificial intelligence godhood who's just perfect and makes no mistakes. It's like you're responsible for what this thing is doing. So you need to make sure that what you're coding and what you're creating is safe, it's competent, and it's clean. Maybe that's a little bit too into the developer weeds for a lot of people that are just listening that aren't into the technical stuff. But you do need to be able to be a competent coder to use AI appropriately. Like that's just the end. That's just the end of that. Don't let people hype you up. It is a tool at the end of the day. It does have a logic, and you do have to know what you're doing and why you're executing these programs. So that's first and foremost going to be in our very as a means of helping people who struggle with the code, maybe on a language basis, but not on an intellectual and logic basis. That you can figure out the logic of how you want your quest, for instance, to break down. Like the quest stages. It's going to begin here. It's going to have these two options spoken by these two characters with this dialogue. So the AI can teach you how to do that and how to implement that appropriately. And then if you learn from there, reading tutorials, showing the AI the tutorials that you're reading and saying, can you adapt to this? You will begin to be able to code your own quests, just like we used to the hard way back in the day, in a much easier fashion than you ever have before. And that is going to be very, very, and I'm very excited for people to express their creativity this way if they're not afraid of it. Because it is very scary, and I just dropped a scary bomb on people that it is your responsibility to get this right. But it is much easier than it has ever been before, and I do foresee a creative explosion from people that typically would not be doing this kind of work because that barrier to entry is going to be so much lower. But what I want and what I am hopeful for is that how everybody was like, there were a group of kids in your math class in middle school and high school that were the mathletes, and they were fucking excited about math. But then, like the rest of the class, they couldn't wait to get out of there. Like they couldn't wait to be away from the shit. It was boring. It was frustrating. It was just tiresome. A lot of it was just rote memorization. It was just really frustrating. But there was a middle ground of kids that intellectually really wanted to enjoy math. They didn't like the presentation of it at all. I was one of those kids, and I hated that shit. But I loved the concepts. I loved the history. I loved reading the theorems. I loved understanding why these concepts worked in the world. But sitting down and doing the math work itself, agony to me. I did eventually overcome that through college and later. But AI definitely reduces the amount of frustration between the intellectual presentation of these things and teaching you in a way that you want to learn. It does lower the barrier to you a little bit, and it can teach you to do things in high level concepts that you never thought would be exciting before. But once you start breaking through that barrier, you start seeing your programs come to life and do what you expected them to do. And that story that you wrote, the actors are starting to speak their lines. That is, oh my God, it's like crack. Like you dream about it, you think about it, you want to do it, you tell people about it, and they're like, you're crazy, what are you talking about? But you're just so excited about this cool stuff that you're making. And in a lot of ways, that is a very experience, but it is a very social experience too. You do have to learn how to talk to your crew. You have to communicate with people on a very personal basis, on sometimes very difficult problems to solve. Sometimes that's it brings up a lot of really heavy emotions, like the creative act, because it's so personal and it requires so much of you to sacrifice for someone else on their behalf. That can be very hot with a lot of emotions. The AI is not going to get rid of that. That is always going to persist. So in the future, what I see for modding, especially as AI becomes more competent, I don't know if AI is going to become more ethical is the problem. Maybe not even in our lifetime. Like it does have to go that training data route. If we can get local models trained locally on creative output, that would be much more ethical than what's going on right now. I think that thing, especially when it comes to voice work. I would rather see some of the technical hurdles be lowered than the artistic hurdles. I want the art to still be coming from human beings. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be placing pixel by hand. Procedural generation is obviously something that we've been using for many, many years. Putting an intelligence behind that's better than the waveform collapse or any of the other models that we have now. That could be very, very cool. It could be very exciting. But I would still like the layer of like the storytelling and the intellect and ultimately the voice acting that goes on top of that, the passion of the performances. I would very much like that to be coming from human beings and just have the AI barrier that, because again, as we've talked about several times throughout this, if you're just making a weapons pack or an armor pack, a house mod, that's really cool. But to me, that is the kiddie pool. I want people to be making stories that make you think, make you feel something, make you look at the world around you a little. And I don't foresee a lot of that happening immediately because that is such an elite level of development. It's you have to master so much beneath that before you can reach that. Most people quit and give up before they ever summit. And I want to see more of that. And I hope the AI lowers that possible, but we won't know until we see.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Thain, founder and lead developer of Radian-Helix Media and lead developer of Fallout New California. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow to be notified of future episodes, and consider subscribing to our Patreon for early access to new uploads to help keep episodes ad-free and to improve the quality and frequency of transmission. Until next time, dear listener, I thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland.